What are most environmentalists getting wrong? What's the best investment for a cleaner tomorrow? And that's right, on this episode, we're going nuclear. So the real issue is that a lot of the renewable resources that we want to rely on, like solar power or hydrogen, they're just too inconsistent. There's too many things you can't control, and they don't actually make a stronger infrastructure. To actually get around this, utility companies, even companies like Tesla, are now having to consider like batteries the size of buses outside of cities, so that when it inevitably crashes and there's no power, that you still have some sort of resource. And I think what that leads to, everything's more expensive, upkeep's more expensive. When I say everything's more expensive, I mean your bills will be more expensive, but so will everyone else's bills. So whether it's for production, or like manufacturers to run the factories, or if it's to charge your car, or if it's related to even just the production or the different services. If you go somewhere, energy is a tax on everything. So if you make a system that is less stable and more expensive, you're not actually going to help anything. You're going to make life more difficult. And so this is one of the huge fears with us. Had this big push to leave coal and oil. We're already seeing the ripple effects, where the technology's not there to support it in those areas. But we already have a solution that works, and no one seems to be paying attention to it. So we're going to break that down in this video. You see, nuclear energy only currently supplies about 11% of the world's energy, but it accounts for 60% of all clean energy produced. And even though there's been all these great innovations and for probably the past decade, and massive improvements in safety, it's generally the best path towards a cleaner tomorrow, the entire industry is still only $20 billion in its market cap. Think how crazy that is. Okay, so let's break this down. A lot of people are wondering if uranium's going to be capped out in its prices. Now, this has mostly just been because of the COVID shortage, though. I don't think at all we've priced in the larger supply issues that will probably come from increased demand. You have to think with the projections that we're seeing for 2035, and actually a major provider for those predictions, and if you'd like to learn more a little bit on your own after this video, make sure to check out the UXC website. You're going to find tons of data on here. A lot of the things that I'm about to cover are from this website directly. So we're going to need to see about a 1,020% increase by 2035 to keep up with the increased demand. Most of this demand is coming from the Eastern world. So here in the U.S., we're completely unaware. We're not really paying attention to that. But China's making huge pushes. Japan's making huge pushes. India's starting to take interest in getting some pushes. There's about 50 new plants being built. And there really wasn't any large demands prior. And there's a bunch of fear in a lot of countries that it's still dangerous. So a few things have changed, though. It's way safer. It's way more efficacious. You only need about 75% of the uranium you used to need to make the same amount of energy. Because with this new process, with the process they currently use called underfeeding, you have this excess supplies that you can utilize. And so with a ton of excess supply from some plants closing down, or even having issues where they have to shut down the plant, like we think of Japan's plants, they sold all the excess uranium that they didn't use. So you have these big supplies sitting around. You have these big producers. Kazakhstan produces like 50% of all the uranium globally right now. But as those have been depleted more and more, some mines have now closed, and new mines are not being opened up at a fast enough rate, because the litigation you have to go through to open a new one, or even open up a new plant in some parts of the world, takes decades. Sometimes you could think about a decade to get through all the paperwork to get the rights to make the mine, and then something like 1 in 50 mines are actually useful long term. A lot of them are duds, so there's that issue. And then it takes about 10 to 15 years to build a plant. And then if you're building a plant in a completely new area, it's going to take you about another 10 years to build, or longer, to build up the new supply chain to get the uranium to the plants. Okay, so this is going to create all kinds of complexities when we look in the long term Okay, where those demands estimates are, keeping in mind that they're probably shooting under what it will actually be because of the reasons at the beginning of the video. Obviously, this is the best route to go. It'll only continue to gain traction from here as people start to realize how much the technology has improved. So when those needs rise higher than the expectations, and then you have all these complexities to get this to meet the demands, it's going to cause this price inflation. And utility companies are not going to be prepared for this. Now, right now, it's super cheap to run a uranium plant, super cheap. So you don't worry about how much you pay. These companies often even pay more than the current price of uranium when they sign their multi-year contracts. Contracts are extremely long in this industry because the supply chain and everything else. Supply chain is like 18 to 24 months usually. And basically what this will lead to is a huge rush to get new contracts because you're run low on your supply, you're trying to catch up because of what happened with COVID, and then slowly more of these resources that exist now are going to completely deplete. Some of these mines, a lot of the mines and major providers are going to be are expected to be depleted by 2028. So there's going to be a rush to contracts. And now you aren't going to have the freedom to kind of choose whatever provider you want. You might have to start worrying about the costs because the costs will spike because the demand's going up as the amount of supplies go down, and it's going to be nearly impossible to keep up. We're talking about by 7 years, we could have huge shortages, and then by 2035, we need 1,000% increase in the amount of supply. But even getting a new mine takes a decade. And then building the new plants, there's no expectation on how many will actually get completed or where they stand or any, engineering fallbacks or, a lot of those probably got disrupted in their production because of the COVID supply chain issues as well. There's a lot to keep track of. So when I'm thinking about where these prices could go, it's kind of hard to even see where you could have lull periods. Maybe there's because we're already pushing away from coal and oil. So we're going to need to probably, and what we're already seeing from some of Europe is an embracement of those, and everyone's rushing to those types of energy to invest because they're having huge price inflation, whether it's natural gas or solar, and of course, obviously coal and oil. These are appreciating quickly, and uranium's only up, I think last I checked, like maybe 38% on the year. But $20 billion market cap industry, but it's the largest producer of clean energy. It's the most stable. It would be the cheapest. It is the cheapest to maintain. Uranium plants are extremely cheap for utility companies to maintain, which is right now why they don't have to really worry about prices because they're so efficacious. And a lot of those things that kept it cheap are going to go away, and a lot of the excess supply that they have is also going to deplete. And so I see this as a great long-term allocation while everyone's crowding to what's in front of them right now. I like to buy into the future, and I've been kind of tempted on, maybe waiting for a pullback, but the more I dig into this, the more I'm learning, the less and less I feel like we even have the potential for a pullback. I don't see these needs depleting. In fact, we've seen lots of estimates for companies asking to extend the timelines, even here in the U.S., to extend the timelines that they can use their uranium plants, trying to get some more use out of them. And they can do this. That might sound questionable, but they can do this in some cases because the process becomes so much more efficient. But again, you're trying to extend the ones that exist. You're not making any new ones, putting that supply. It kind of makes uranium sound like a gold mine investment. And here in the West, we're so, no one's really paying attention to energy. And then everyone's focused on oil and what's going on with the natural gas, and they're all excited about solar power. And, especially from environmentalists, some of them are very opposed to what is the best solution for the problems that we're faced with today and the problems that could appear in the future. This technology is not going anywhere. And you have to think also, so if those alternatives that they want to do right now that are being pushed, gas and solar, those are going to increase energy prices, which increases the price of everything. But if we go to nuclear, it will decrease the price of energy. And it will continue to decrease as the technology improves. So what will that do to the price of everything? So if it's all energy is cheaper, then it's probably cheaper to mine crypto, isn't it? More on this in a future episode. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Nobel Show.